Welcome everyone to our press conference, Rights of Nature is a Systemic Solution to the Climate Crisis, co-hosted by the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, WECAN, Movement Rights, and the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature. Welcome everyone. My name is Osprey, Orielle, and I am the founder and executive director of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, and I'm also on the executive committee of the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature. And I want to thank my colleagues for participating in this press conference to share their important perspectives and voices. So after I make my comments, we'll be hearing from Casey Horinek. She's from the Ponca Nation. She's the environmental ambassador for the Ponca and a WECAN board member and a Movement Rights board member, and she's from Turtle Island, the USA. And then we will be also hearing from another dear colleague, Nnimmo Bassey. He is the executive director of the Health of Mother Earth Foundation from Nigeria. So I'm really feel surrounded by a great deal of wisdom. We're living in a time in which we must really change everything about how we're living with Mother Earth and each other. And the urgency of the climate and ecological crises demand that we completely redesign our economic, social, and legal systems. And in our global movements for rights of nature, we are looking for a revolutionary and evolutionary change for society. And this is really important right now as we're at this COP and seeing how governments are meeting and what is being discussed. We need major change. We need transformative ways of creating a path forward. And I also want to talk about how a lot of the vision of the rights of nature movement and the worldviews that are represented around nature really come from indigenous peoples, and to really acknowledge that as we work and talk about rights of nature. We have so much to learn from original instructions of our indigenous sisters and brothers and how it informs rights of nature. And after decades of environmental protection laws, which certainly have accomplished some things, absolutely, our modern legal systems have really failed to prevent the degradation of the earth and the sacred systems of life, and also the displacement of so many people around the world, and many, many deaths as we're seeing. So the system we're in is simply not working. In particular, there's concern for indigenous and frontline communities who bear the worst impacts of disasters because of environmental racism and other societal injustices. So also we need to have an intersectional approach. To truly live sustainably and live in harmony with the earth, we need to change the very foundations, the structural DNA of our legal frameworks to respect the natural laws of the earth. And today, the majority of the world's legal frameworks are based on treating nature as property, and this is the key problem that we have to alter and change. Our life-giving rivers, forests, and mountains are treated as property to be sold and consumed, and as property, these natural communities and ecosystems are not recognized as rights holders. So in most legal systems, because nature is property, it's invisible in courts. In other words, a river cannot be represented. That needs to change. By maintaining this current structure of law, we are furthering a dangerous human relationship to the natural world of ownership and exploitation. And we have to ask ourselves, why haven't we stopped these destructive actions that not only are lethal, but are actually currently legal under our laws? The very laws that we have are, in other words, killing us. We need an entirely different legal configuration that recognizes the Earth's living systems are not the enslaved property of humans. And a primary premise of rights of nature is that in order to ensure a thriving future, humans must reorient ourselves from an exploitive and ultimately self-destructive relationship with nature to one that honors the deep interrelation of life and contributes to the health and integrity of the natural world. So this is a very different view of reciprocity. How do we live in relationship and reciprocity with the natural laws and not be here extracting? An essential step in achieving this is to create a system of jurisprudence that sees and treats nature as a fundamental rights-bearing entity and not as property to be exploited. And in our movements, we advocate that breaking out of the human-centered limitations of our current legal systems is actually one of the most transformative and highly leveraged actions that humanity can take to create a healthy and just world for all. So it's a very high-level understanding of how we need to live here, but it's also really close to Mother Earth. Like, how do we live here in a way that really respects the land? And as the climate disruption and environmental degradation is increasing globally, it could not be more important to highlight that exploitation and extractivism is a result of patriarchal societies, colonization, racism, and neoliberal capitalism. So one of the things I really love about Rights of Nature is that it's very holistic and it's large enough to really take on what we really are now calling a polycrisis, which is both the social and ecological and economic issues that we're facing all at once. All of these systems are based upon the same systems and ideology of power over and exploitation of women, indigenous people, people of color, and the land. And it's clear that the global community needs to address these systems of oppression in an intersectional manner to move towards justice and real solutions. And I think this is where Rights of Nature has such a vital role to play. We are seeing in our collective work globally that people's movements are rising to say no to the commodification of Mother Earth and sky. Our earth and atmosphere are not for sale. We don't want our sacred earth, our water and air and forest in the marketplace. And that's a lot of what's going on in these negotiations, is all these carbon offset schemes and how do we financialize and commodification of nature. I think I made up a new word.
I'm going to use it.
You like that word, okay. We don't want the financialization and commodification of nature. And that is what's happening in a lot of these negotiating rooms. And it really is something that has to stop. You know, we're not here to be exploiting and treating Mother Earth as if Mother Earth is a marketplace. So these are false solutions, and we need to really look at real solutions to this crisis. And we can't keep taking and taking, or simply we won't be here on Earth anymore. And at the national level, what I want to share with you is that, you know, around the world, globally, nationally, locally, we are seeing Rights of Nature movement growing and growing. In 2008, Ecuador became the first country in the world to have Rights of Nature in their constitution. So this is not just like some fanciful idea. We're actually embodying this, implementing Rights of Nature in many different areas of the world as we stand right now. In local Rights of Nature ordinances in the United States today, we see these ordinances protecting communities from harmful practices such as shale gas drilling and fracking. The Ponca Nation, which I'm sure Casey will talk about, has made history as the first tribe in the United States to recognize Rights of Nature in law to protect their territory from fossil fuel extraction. In New Zealand, the Parliament has given the Wanganui River the legal right, and it now is recognized as person, as an ancestor, as Indigenous people have always seen the river. So the Wanganui River has personhood. The Colombian Supreme Court has recognized Rights of Nature of the Amazon River ecosystem. And I could go on and on. It's been incredible in the last years what has happened with the growing Rights of Nature movement. And even the Secretary General has recognized earlier this year that Earth jurisprudence is one of the fastest growing environmental movements that we see right now. And Rights of Nature is really at the core of that. And I also want to point out that over the last few years, Rights of Nature has become law in over 20 countries. So there's a lot of movement happening here. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that one of the things that we're having as a movement, as a demand here at COP28, is that we have the Universal Declaration on the Rights of Humans. And we are proposing that the United Nations take on the Universal Declarations of the Rights of Mother Earth. It is time to have Mother Earth be at the center of the conversation. Mother Earth should be governing what we're doing. And that is what's going to really help us resolve so many of these incredible crises that we're facing, is to recognize Mother Earth's laws and her natural systems. And we're releasing today a report called Rights of Nature, Redefining Global Climate Solutions and Environmental Protection for Systemic Change, because we think this is one of the most transformative ways that we can resolve the climate crisis. Thank you. And I hand the floor over to Casey Camp-Horinek. Thank you, Casey.
Latia. I'm Ponca. I'm from the occupied territory of Oklahoma in the United States. I'm very blessed to be here on this panel, and I thank you very much, Osprey and WECAN, and so good to see you again, and I'm looking forward to listening to you. I do have those little titles that people give me or offer me called the Ambassador for the Environment of the Ponca Nation. I sit on the board of WECAN and Movement Rights, and we collaborate on a regular basis as women who are looking for the future generations to have a way to go forward. In the simplest way, the rights of the future generations to breathe clean air, to eat healthy food, to drink healthy, sacred water, and to live in a place on Mother Earth that is cared for and loved as she loves and cares for them. To understand that the fire is a natural entity, and that as the natural laws are in place, it's our job as humans to realign ourselves with those natural laws and to take that Western concept of ownership a step further and reteach humans how to be part of all that is in a very conscious way. We do it unconsciously. But I also want to mention to you that my real place in life, and thank you all for being here and representing your bloodlines and where you're from, and what the land that you live on teaches you. Thank you for taking that home, and thank you for bringing it here. I'm a mother. I'm a survivor, a granddaughter of a Holocaust that was committed in the United States. Some 500 years ago, the first contact with the Ponca was when my grandpa was forcibly removed from our territory when he was 6 years old, and went on a trail of tears where 1 in 3 of our people died. We had also been in a place prior to that along Nnimmo, or the Missouri River, where they brought us smallpox blankets, wanting that portion of the earth to call their own, because they don't understand that all things are sources of life. They thought they were resources to be exploited, to be killed, and to be sold, and to be claimed. We were reduced to around 200 at that time, just over 200. We've regrown to maybe around 3,000 right now and expanded a bit. But what we did not know was the language or the Western law concept. We had been taught a concept of how to live in that circle way, what they call a circle economy these days, where you always give more than you take. And you always take what is offered to you to sustain life and no more. And you give to the life that gives to you spiritually, physically, and there's this word, instead of resource, if we looked at everything as a relative. And being a relative to all was something that the colonized mind didn't understand when it came to these shores, utilizing the doctrine of discovery to claim and to patronize and to create a situation where women were bought and sold, and they still are today, but in different ways, because any violence against our Mother Earth is violence against us. And we have to sell this commodity of life many times in order to survive. Our ancestors, your ancestors, we knew how to grow our food to feed our families, to only take from the forelegs, from the fins, from the wings, what was necessary for us to sustain life. And so life was thriving. And then came that time people began to think that you could dig into the flesh of the Mother Earth and extract from her the things that kept her alive. Those things that are called now gas and oil are actually very sacred portions of her body. Just as with the human body, everything has a purpose. And so when those things began to be extracted and burned and creating new machinery, things changed in the whole way humankind acted and reacted and interacted with the rest of all living things. So if I come into this time and this century, and we of the Ponca Nation have learned Western law, we've learned how to speak this language, we've learned the social norms, we've learned the religion, we've learned the ways of the people who came onto our shores that we welcomed. And we understood that there must be a way. I was at a meeting, a summit of 100 women, that women are, you had a different name then, but it was WECAN regardless. And I met a young woman named Shannon Biggs, who is part of founding movement rights. And when I met these ladies, they talked about rights of nature, but to me at that time it was just another way to make a law around the sacred. And then after a series of events where we traveled to these portions of the earth where the recognition was there of the life of the rivers and the manner in which those folks, those tribal people had approached it, helped me to go home and then be elected to council in a leadership position and begin to move towards that, first with a moratorium that we passed, a law that was a moratorium on fracking and injection wells. And then moratoriums and actual statutes against, resolutions against KXL and other pipelines, because Oklahoma's the nexus for those, and we were having 10,000 earthquakes, literally, from fracking. And methane gas, killing of the earth all around us. And so then we began to look at how to align Western law with our traditional value system. And it worked well to use those words, rights of nature, recognizing, as we were at Standing Rock, calling ourselves water protectors and land defenders, to fully come into the understanding that we at this particular crisis, this time of climate chaos, is the purification, and it is the process of prophecy that we had been taught when we were young, that the earth herself would have to take care of business. That's natural law. And natural law will happen. Mother Earth doesn't have to ask you for a right. With a shrug of her shoulder, she can shake you off and you're gone. So today, to have these laws, these statutes in place, the rights of the river and the rights of nature, only makes sense because the polluters are showing who they are. Their progeny, their generations to come are going to have to look at this terrible mass murder that they're committing against all living things, the serial killers that they are. And we have to call that out for the reality that it is. And in order to create protection in every way that we can, this can be fast-tracked in your own backyard. And it's up to you. And I'm grateful to be among you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Casey. And just to emphasize that this rights of nature work can be done in everyone's community. And you can go to the website that we have at the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature and learn more about how to implement rights of nature right around your own kitchen table in your own community. So just wanted to encourage people to understand that. And I'm really honored now to hand over the floor to Nnimmo Bassey, my dear colleague.
Thank you so much, Cassie, and thanks a lot, Osprey. It's always a great pleasure to talk about our mother, Mother Earth, because she gave birth to us, and one day we must return to her, either consciously or unconsciously. Recently, I took a trip to a community in Uganda, and I went to the area where oil is being drilled. and they're drilling the oil in a national reserve protected environment. And they have this beautiful highway cutting right through the nationally protected forest area. And what really struck me was the amount of baboons and monkeys who were sitting by the roadside and just looking so disturbed and disoriented, wondering. They were looking at the cars passing by. And it really broke my heart because it drove home to me that we have lost our connection with nature. We think only of ourselves as humans, and we don't realize that what happens to the next species also happens to us. I was so glad at the Ecuadorian pavilion the other day, somebody showed it. It was Nati. Nati projected a picture of a frog and said that frog has a right. Yes. And you know, when we look at certain species, butterflies, bees, snakes, we may not love them, but if any of these species disappear, we are disappearing also. Because we are so interwoven as children of Mother Earth, and none of us is separate, whether you realize it or not. If the butterflies disappear, food production, if butterflies and bees disappear, food production will simply collapse on Earth. And so the smallest thing around, smallest thing, when I say I use thing, not because I'm looking for a better word, it could be, they are living things, but we don't just know. I once visited a man who has built a forest in the Sahel. It's a man who stopped the desert. He just passed away about 3 days ago. And that's really very touching, but I know he must be at peace wherever he is. I was with him in the forest he created in the Sahel, and we stood at a place and he was showing me and naming trees I could not see, even with my glasses. These trees, things between the rocks, because he has lived so close to nature that he could identify even the things that we hardly see. He could see them, he could feel them, he could tell you what is here and what is there. And so this kind of knowledge and wisdom that we've lost over the years is really very disturbing. And that's why the rights of nature, being recognized globally as a universal right, as a very basic fundamental right, is very important. Because it's this lack of connection that brings about all the false solutions we hear about at the Conference of Parties. And somebody just said earlier today that the false solutions are constructed on false needs, because we have the need for capital. So we talk about carbon credit so that we can get money, financializing nature because of money. If value is not put on nature, it's not going to be protected or respected. I think this is a very warped way of thinking. It's crazy to think that without money you cannot appreciate a thing. So if you put a financial value on a human, then you can value what that human is. I think it's something that we need to completely overthrow and rethink. And if we rethink in a way that is respectful of Mother Earth, of nature, even the climate discussions would go in the right direction, because we would not tolerate false solutions, in quotes, because we would not believe that anyone has a right to keep on polluting as far as he can point at a forest in Africa as absorbing the equivalent of the carbon that he or she is polluting somewhere else in the world. It doesn't make sense. Nature is not arithmetic, it's not calculus. Nature is a web. Mother Earth is an intricate web, a connection that we are so intimately interwoven, you can't separate with mathematics. I want to, there's some philosophies in Africa that are so very instructive, and we find it everywhere in the First Nations, in all the indigenous communities around the world. A concept like Ubuntu. It's been popularized. Ubuntu popular. My humanity, I'm human because we are human. My humanity is connected with yours. If you disrespect me, if you bomb me, destroy my community, it means you don't respect my humanity. And that means you are less than human also. And, there's another philosophy, the Sankofa. You heard about the Sankofa bird, always looking back, because our future is in our past. We have to construct our future from a knowledge of where we're coming from. If you don't know where you're coming from, honestly, you don't know where you're going. You're just wondering about falling, stumbling over everything, crashing everywhere, destroying everything like a bull in a china shop. We need to know our history. And then the Swahili they have a concept of Harambe. Harambe is cooperation. We pull together. We don't go alone. You know the philosophy, wisdom that says if you want to go fast, go alone. You're not going to get anywhere. You can go fast, you're not going anywhere. If you want to go far, go with somebody else. Go together, then we can go far. That's why we need to build movements around the world. We need to build alliances, galvanize our energies, and stand together against all the false solutions. Tell the COP, 28 years, the COP is in the wrong direction. No matter how fast or how far you go in the wrong direction, you will not get to the right destination. And so we need to, it's really time for us to come together, bring the wisdom from indigenous communities, and let's have the humility to listen and learn and know that if we're going to go forward, we must learn about where the rain started to fall upon us. And finally, it's so disturbing, distressing to see that earth defenders are among the most threatened in the world today. Earth defenders are being killed, sacrificed, assassinated, and we have to stand together to defend them, because they defend nature, earth, that as they defend Mother Earth, they are defending us, because we're all children of Mother Earth.
Yes.
So we only have a few moments left, and I just wanted to thank both Casey and Nnimmo for their powerful words, and to say one of the things that I think is really important in this moment is that we know that the systems that are being discussed and the mechanisms at COP28, as Nnimmo said, are going in the wrong direction. And one of the things that I think we can realize is that when there is a crack in the system like we're seeing now, this level of false solutions, this level of chaos and crisis, it's also an opportunity for new ideas or very ancient ideas that need to be remembered and renewed, and remembering our past and bringing it forward when we lived in harmony with the land. It's a moment for us to actually be able to bring forward new ways of living and being with each other, new laws, new ways of understanding of how we're going to live with each other and Mother Earth in harmony. And so I really want people to walk away not thinking that this is a fanciful idea. Like we said, this is already being implemented. It is a growing movement. It's very positive. It resonates with people because we all know we need to come home to Mother Earth and live in a very different way. And it is a very powerful legal structure. And we don't have time in this short press conference to outline to all of you the actual jurisprudence, but in the Global Alliance for Rights of Nature, there are many working groups. There's lawyers, there's academics, there's activists. So this is a very full, robust movement that is well documented, and it is something that everyone can be a part of, but also understand that it is actually a legal framework that we can start implementing right now. We don't have to wait for governments all over the world to figure this out. We can implement this in our local communities. And again, I would encourage you to go to the website to learn more and to realize that you can take power in your own hands, and that Mother Earth is asking us to stand up like her immune system and to fight for her and to realize what it is we're fighting for and how. So with that, we thank you so much. I know that our time is complete here, and please give an applause to my colleagues. Thank you so much.